Sean Connery in a gun barrel, a rocket jet pack, a fake funeral, James Bond punching a woman, Bond's French connection, cryptic Latin inscriptions etched on a chapel wall, water cannons shooting the bad guys from the Aston Martin DB-5, and of course, a fight. These are just some of the things we'll examine as we look into the pre-title sequence in the 1965 James Bond movie, Thunderball. Hi, this is Dan Silvestri.
Tom Pizzato.
And Vicky Hodges.
From SpyMovieNavigator.com. Please join us as we're cracking the code of the pre-title sequence in Thunderball. So let's go. We see for the first time in the gun barrel, it's not Bob Simmons, the stunt guy. It's Sean Connery.
Go figure, it's Bond.
Yeah, and from this point on, we are actually going to see Bond in the pre-title sequences in the gun barrel and not a stuntman. What a concept. They needed to change the clip here as the aspect ratio for Thunderball changed from the previous movie, so they couldn't reuse the clip that they had from the prior movies.
One thing we haven't mentioned yet in our pre-title sequence podcast series is the origins of the gun barrel. We had mentioned the pre-title sequence in the 1934 movie Crime Without Passion in an earlier podcast. But we haven't yet talked about the ending to the 1903 movie, The Great Train Robbery, which ends with a gunman pointing the gun at the viewer and firing. Some people think this scene also influenced the gun barrel sequences.
Yeah, it's funny that these things were around decades and decades before Bond was even written. So that's kind of cool.
It actually is. And then when you hear about how it was made, it sounded like it might have been in the backs of somebody's mind. But when Maurice Binder put that together, he was just playing around and said, hey, if I shoot through this gun barrel, I can do this.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
We had mentioned the pre-title sequence in the 1934 movie Crime Without Passion in an earlier podcast.
We've seen in the first 3 James Bond Ian production movies 2 circles that cross the screen. And by the way, I have always thought those were the 00. That's just my take on it. I don't know. It looks like it should be the 00. But here in Thunderball, when the gun barrel scene ends, the gun barrel finally morphs to the first scene in the pre-title sequence. It doesn't just fade out like it did in the other movies. It actually shows us part of the first scene within the gun barrel. First time this has happened. So this is kind of neat. This is cool and a great addition to the series. And the circle shows the initials here, JB. And as the camera pans backwards, it shows JB is emblazoned on a casket. What? Again, for about 20 seconds, we must think this is James Bond. Dead.
Yeah.
Again. It's the 4th movie by Ian Productions, and Bond is dead again in the beginning.
Yeah, they just love killing him off right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, we remember from Russia with Love. Of course, it wasn't him, it turns out. But wow, I don't know. This makes me queasy, and I don't know what to do because Bond's dead already. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's another 21 movies. How can this be?
Well, we know that now. Back then.
Back then, you didn't know it. So there's some advantage to being in the future. But this makes me just queasy. I got Bond dead. I don't know. This makes me want to have a sip of coffee because I got to wake up here because Bond's dead. I'm just too nervous. Hang on. Hey, we found a delicious coffee for you, by the way. I mean, this is Spy Coffees, and you can find them at spycoffees.com. And our listeners get 20% off with roasts like Spy Master Dark Roast or Double Agent Medium Roast, which I'm drinking right now, or Agent Blend Light Roast. In whole bean, ground, and even some K-Cups. Make a clandestine trip to spycoffees.com and use the spy code SPYNAV, SPYNAV, and you'll get 20% off at checkout. All right, let's get back. I think I'm awake.
We see as the funeral's ending in this small, beautiful French chapel, James Bond on this inside balcony, speaking with a woman who turns out to be his French MI6 connection.
You know, I'm pleased the creators went with a lighter setting for this pre-title sequence. Of course, the last 2 films have been set at night, giving a dangerous, foreboding atmosphere. This one feels more normal and more inviting to the viewer.
I like that too.
That's good. It is a lot lighter feeling, except it's a funeral.
Yeah,
there is that.
So now the funeral with the JB on it was really for Jacques Bouvard, who was Spectre number 6, who Bond reveals murdered 2 of his colleagues. Now I'm wondering, what is James Bond doing at Jacques Bouvar's funeral? I don't get it.
It makes me wonder, why is he there?
Now, we don't know if he killed 2 00 agents or colleagues perhaps from the CIA or the French Deuxième Bureau. Though his French contact, who's credited as Mademoiselle Laporte, says,
"At least you've been saved the effort of removing him. Colonel Bouvard passed away in his sleep, so they tell me."
It comes out that Bond is disappointed. He didn't get to kill him himself.
You sound disappointed. You did not kill him yourself.
Jacques Bouvard murdered 2 of my colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe I'm listening to this thing too, and I'm thinking maybe the French contact just told us what Bond is doing there in France. He was going to kill Bouvard. And maybe Bouvard found out and staged this whole thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but if this is Bouvard's funeral, it looks to me like somebody beat Bond to it. She says he may have died in his sleep, but given that this is somebody Bond was going to be going after, I kind of doubt that. Somebody probably beat Bond to it.
Yeah.
On the wall next to the balcony is Latin text. Causam pro dicit apud Deum. I don't speak Latin, but we've looked into this and can't get a definitive translation of this, but best guess that it's a Ken Adams team special. The closest we could find for the translation is something like, "He will say that with God," trying to portray a religious significance to the funeral, maybe?
Well, who knows? I mean, Latin is a tough language.
Yeah.
It's the old saying, when we had to study it, it was horrible. We used to say Latin is a dead language. It's as dead as can be. First it killed the Romans, and now it's killing me. So I don't know if we pronounced that right or not. But anyway, I know a cousin of mine who does know Latin. A lot of Latin. And he's one of the brightest guys I know. So I said to him, "Hey, this is what we got. What the hell does this mean?" And he quickly replied, "He recites or pleads his cause before God." So the Latin that Vicky just read meticulously well means he recites or pleads his cause before God. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is kind of cool. This could actually fit into the movie. It makes sense. If we look at he being Jacques Bouvard, and who at the moment we think is dead, he could be pleading his case before God right now. Like, "Hey, God, I'm an assassin, and I did my job. Hey, don't hold that against me."
It could be a general message which includes Bond too and what he's about to do when he thinks Bouvard is still alive.
Yeah.
"Hey, God, I'll plead my case right now before you. I'm going to do my best to kill Bouvard."
Yeah, I like that. See?
What a great
All of a sudden
great
we have
prayer.
this little inscription, and now we could put this into this pre-title clip and think, wait a minute, this has meaning. So I really like that you found this text on. Now, if Tom found this, hey, there's this Latin text in there, and I'm looking for a plaque or something, and thinking, I have not seen this text anywhere on the screen. I'm looking over and over again, and then it's inscribed in the wall near the ceiling. And it's believable that it would be inscribed on a chapel wall because they do that kind of thing. But including it in the movie, this part of it is intentional. So it's not a prop. It's there, but I think it was intentional that they included this part in this clip. So this is good. I think we uncovered something here that most people would miss.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, I mean, like I said, I think it's a Ken Adams set.
No, but I think it's believable that it would be inscribed on a chapel wall. But including it in the movie certainly is intentional. So I've looked into this a little bit more, and I found other pictures of the chapel, and inscriptions are written all around the chapel near the ceiling, as we see in the pre-title clip. And so what we see here is part of the total that seems to be really in the chapel. So I contacted jamesbondlocations.blogspot.com and talked to the guy there and asked if we can use some of his pictures that we're going to put in the video. And indeed, there is this inscription all around the chapel. So not a set. This was shot in this chapel, and those inscriptions are really on the wall. Very cool.
I'm glad you found that, because like Vicky, I thought this whole thing was a set, not a real chapel.
Yeah.
When I noticed the Latin, I went back and looked at this whole scene. I went frame by frame through this thing, because trying to catch that whole phrase, the Deum's really hard to pick up.
Yes.
But I also looked at on the balcony itself. there's some artwork of some kind, and there's a letter B repeating in the artwork. So I was thinking maybe this was B for Bouvard. Well, but if it was in the chapel when they got there for filming, it obviously is just a coincidence.
Yeah.
So I thought this was really a nice set piece that, they say all doors lead to Pinewood.
Yeah.
It's cool you found those pictures because it shows it really was filmed at the chapel at the chateau.
Yeah.
Not a set like I had originally believed.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun discovering that. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Don, with the Latin stuff in there. It was great. It was great to see that. So as the funeral is exiting the chapel, Bond and his French contact, the woman, walk out onto the outer balcony. We can interpret what Bond means when his contact asks,
Is there anything else our French station can do for Monsieur Bond?
and Bond replies, looking at her and then away like,
Later, perhaps.
That dirty dog.
yeah, a good Bond
Gotta love
moment.
it.
He watches the widow get into the limo, opening the door for herself. And Bond says to his French contact,
As I said, later. Come on.
and the come on is important here.
Why is that important here?
We're going to explain that in a few minutes, but remember that Bond said, come on. All right, so we switch to the chateau. The widow arrives and enters the room in which James Bond awaits. The chateau is the Chateau d'Anay, located about 78 kilometers west of Paris, France, near Dreux. All right, I don't know. It's a French town. It's Dreux. I think it's Dreux. My wife speaks French, and she said that. And it was
Don't
built.
ask me.
And it was built from 1547 to 1552. So in non-COVID times, you can go actually sign up for tours of the villa. It's pretty cool.
That is cool, yeah.
We're going to have to do one of those trips.
I would love to go stand in that chapel.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've all wondered, or at least should have wondered, how Bond got to the chateau ahead of the widow. Because we see him standing on the outdoor balcony of the church, watching the widow get into the limo, and then the limo drives off. Actually, you can check out more on the Lincoln Continental Stretch limo on my YouTube channel, The Bond Room Unlocked, episode 3, whereby I look at this elegant vehicle in more detail.
Very cool channel. Check it out. It's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in reality, the chapel was built just east of the east wing of the real chateau. The east wing no longer exists, but the west wing is still there. And so the chapel now is freestanding. So in real life, it's basically right there. It's right on the grounds. It's next door to where, there we go. But in the movie, it seems like it's some distance off. They get into the limo, they're driving and so on. And so we're going to run with that. But still, how did Bond beat the widow to the chateau?
Well, she took the car.
Yeah.
He walked down the stairs from the balcony and just cut across the lawn. Or maybe she stopped at McDonald's or something.
Well, this too we'll address in a minute. Yeah.
Okay, so we see Bond in an upstairs room, seated calmly in a wingback chair as the widow walks in and locks the door behind her. This is a great set. This is supposed to be an old chateau and is appointed like it. I really like the way they did this room. The details on the doors, the tapestries, all of it. Really well done by Ken Adam and his team yet again.
Yeah, I love the ornate doors, the fireplace, everything. It looks fantastic. It looks
Absolutely
fantastic.
does.
And Bond confronts the widow, expressing his condolences. Then he punches the widow.
Yeah.
And as we realise, the widow is really Jacques Bouvard. And a very good fight ensues. And then eventually, Bond gets the better of Jacques and strangles him with a fireplace poker. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, well, again, from one of our posts on Facebook about this upcoming podcast, we have another first pointed out by Steven Saltzman. He says, huge risks involved financially and technically in the movie he's talking about in Thunderball. This is a massive undertaking for Thunderball with the underwater scenes, breaking new grounds, both in terms of direction and camera technology and so on. A lot of firsts. And I think he was talking about that in terms of costs and production costs and so on. Also, the first Bond to feature a cross-dresser brandishing a steel poker. Actually, it's Bob Simmons in drag. So that's all true. And I never thought of it that way. But yeah, okay, this is the first Bond movie with a guy in drag. Okay.
So now you say financially and technically, is it just the cross-dresser part? Or
No,
did
for
they
the whole
film
movie.
it at the chateau and there was a huge financial liability there?
I think he meant the whole movie. And why would he know something about that? Well, This comment was sent to us by Steven Saltzman. You may have heard the last name Saltzman. Yeah, Harry Saltzman. This is Harry Saltzman's son talking to us. Yeah, of course, Harry was the co-producer along with Albert Cubby Broccoli of the first 9 Ian production James Bond movies, including Thunderball. So Harry Saltzman also produced the Harry Palmer movie starring Michael Caine, The Ipcress File, Funeral in Berlin, $1 Billion Brain. And we've talked with Steven on the phone, and he's doing something very cool, actually, by the way, right now with The Ipcress File. He's co-producing a series made for television through ITV starring Peaky Blinders star Joe Cole.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll be talking with Steven about this later, and we'll do a podcast about it with him. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought Joe Cole was really great as John Shelby in Peaky Blinders. So I think it'll be really cool to see him in this role because it'll be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I bet he plays it differently than Michael Caine did. So it'll be really cool to see how that gets done.
Yeah, it looked cool. He's getting some good press on it, too. So that's going to be fun.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right, back to the fight. This kind of gets me. For a gorgeous chateau, impeccably furnished, the furniture during the fight seems to break and fall apart quite easily, like cheap stuff. Oh, come on. Everything is smashing into pieces. You bump into a chair, bam! A table, it's anyway. That got me. It's like, okay, I like the production value of it, but okay. Yeah, Bond wants to kill Bouvard. We know that. He was on the balcony telling the French connection, his French connection, that. Disappointed he didn't do it. Now he has the chance. So what does he do? He gets up from the chair, punches Bouvard. Hey, why don't you do that and then shoot him? Boom, bam, you're dead.
Nobody ever just shoots somebody.
No, he's got to get into a fist fight with the guy. Fist fights can end up badly. I mean, you don't know what Jacques Bouvard could do. Anyway, again, this was Bob Simmons, as Steven Saltzman pointed out, doing the stunts and being Mrs. Bouvard and now Jacques Bouvard. But
yeah,
geez.
I love this fight, Dan. I mean, Bob Simmons, he always fights well.
Yes.
I mean, he was Bond's double in From Russia with Love in that fight scene on the train.
Yeah.
I just love the way that guy does his fighting.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm going to be controversial, and you both know Thunderball is my least favourite of Sean's Bond films.
I can't believe that.
But I still like it. But due to the inconsistent use of sped up footage and at times slower script, the fight for me isn't as impactful as the lift fight in Diamonds Are Forever from 1971. That just feels more brutal for me.
Yeah, well, you're right. The one in Diamonds is brutal. This one gets a little brutal when he's strangling him with the poker. The fireplace poker, but other than that, it's just a fight.
Yeah, but you've also got more room to work with in this scene, where in the lift, it's a very confined space.
Yes,
compact, yeah.
So
that's true
it is
too.
It is going to be pretty brutal, but you couldn't do all the flipping and stuff these guys have to do in this fight inside the lift.
Yeah,
Diamonds.
The fight includes Bouvard picking up a fireplace poker, as we mentioned before. Bond eventually strangles him with it. But he's hitting Bond with it a couple of times. And one of the times he hits him across the back.
Now, waiting from Russia with Love, we see Tanya feeling around Bond's back in the bed, looking for the scar that she knew he had on his lower left back.
Yeah.
Several inches long. And Sylvia Trench mentions it in the boat in the beginning. But From Russia with Love came out in 1963, and Thunderball is 1965. And even with the books by Fleming, From Russia with Love was first in 1957 and then Thunderball in 1961. Could not find a reference to a scar on the back, only on the cheek.
In the books.
So this is not mentioned again in any of the other Bond movies as far as we know.
No,
right?
I don't think so.
I don't remember it.
Yeah.
And then later in Thunderball, when he's in trouble and Spa getting rehabilitated, the therapist notices a bruise on his back, probably 5 to 6 inches long, but on the right side of his back. This is the fireplace poker for sure. Nice connection with the movie.
Yeah, I like that.
Funny looking bruise. Full.
A poker. In the hands of a widow.
I'm surprised. I'd have thought you were just the type for a widow.
Oh, not this one. He didn't like me at all.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between the bruise on the back and a scar, because there's nothing that Patricia Fearing says about a scar. She just comments on the bruise.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that she didn't comment about a scar that was there 2 movies ago.
So Bond strangles Bouvard to death with the fireplace poker. Nice, as he finally gets his wish to kill Bouvard, to get his revenge on the 2 colleagues of Bond that Bouvard murdered.
Bond doing a revenge killing. He seems to like revenge killings. We saw it in License to Kill when he goes after Sanchez.
Yeah.
I've always assumed the dropping of the bald man with the white cat in For Your Eyes Only was Bond killing Blofeld for revenge for Tracy's death from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Although it was actually Boont that killed her. So Blofeld didn't fire the gun, but he was driving. The one that surprised me was in the Quantum of Solace, where he didn't kill Yusuf at the end as revenge for Vesper.
Yeah, I wanted him to.
I was surprised too.
I wanted him to. I was like, pop him and get out of there. But no, he didn't. This one time I was like, do it. All right, back to Thunderball. Bond needs to make a quick exit as he hears others approaching on the other side of the door where Bouvard walked in. Now, they obviously hear the commotion from the fight and all the cheap furniture breaking.
Okay, wait a second. That's the second time you said that about the cheap furniture. It's a lovely chateau, no cheap furniture here.
Yeah, except all the stuff that's smashing into pieces.
Yeah, but it's just old and brittle.
Yeah, right. I don't think so. Anyway, the point is, she locked the door, as you recall, when she came in. For some reason, he, Bouvard, when she came into the room, locked the door. I don't know, maybe she wanted privacy. He wanted privacy. But now they can't get in quickly because the door is locked. That's the point of this, is like, okay, wow, they got to smash through the door. But typical Bond, as we will see this later in this very same movie, here he hesitates on his exit, takes flowers out of a vase, or, well, this is a chateau, it might be a vase, and tosses them, although if it's cheap, it may be a vase, and tosses them on Bouvard's body. The point is this. As Bond is trying to get the hell out of there, the door is being hit from the outside. Remember, he's smashing the door down because it's locked, as we said. Bouvard's guys will be in the room any second. And because Bond stops and throws the flowers on Bouvard, Bouvard's guys get in the room just in time to see Bond exiting through a door, which they would not have seen if Bond weren't so bold. They'd be looking around for a few seconds like, where the hell is it? Where's this guy? Where did he go? No, they see him going out that door so they can go chase him immediately. So,
yeah, but it just makes it more exciting. If you just went, it's like last minute.
I know, that's it. And it's Bond, I'm a cocky son of a gun. I got it.
Well, and it does let the henchmen be available for the next part of this scene. Because if they don't see him go off, they might not have gone out to the balcony for the next part.
I know, but this is a scene in a movie. A spy. He's a spy, for crying out loud. You don't do this kind of crap. As Bond escapes on his rocket belt, yeah, we'll talk about that, Bouvard's goons get off 5 shots at him. Fortunately, they all miss.
They listen to us. Just shoot them.
Yeah, most of the people that shoot at Bond can't hit a damn target. So they get 5 shots off at him, which they would not have gotten off at him had he not thrown the flowers, by the way. They missed, and he would have been killed there for sure. Boom, 1 hit, bam, you're done. Because now he's up in the air in a freaking rocket belt. And now you hit him with a bullet, he can't control it. Bam, he's dead anyway, whether he hits the ground or dies from the bullet.
Yeah, but I remember when I went and shot that handgun, how hard it was to hit something. Trying to shoot something moving with a handgun would be pretty difficult, I would think.
It would be. Bond's pretty good at it, though.
Yeah. So let's get back. You talked about the flowers he tossed on Bouvard.
Yeah.
And they could have been a foreshadowing of Bond's own funeral. Now, Dan, you just said rocket belt, and that was a good choice of words.
Yeah.
This is often referred to as a jetpack, but it's not a jetpack. What he flies is the Bell rocket belt. Okay, I'm going to get a little technical here. The rocket belt works off a chemical reaction, hydrogen peroxide and nitrogen reacting with silver. It results in steam and oxygen blasting out to create the thrust.
Okay.
The important part here is that the difference between a jet and a rocket is that the jet uses atmospheric oxygen to burn their fuel, and thus they have 2 openings at minimum to operate, one to take in oxygen, the other for thrusts or exhaust. Rockets are self-contained and only have the openings for thrust or exhaust. So there you go.
Okay.
Of course you knew that, right?
Yeah, I knew Tom had looked that up.
Yeah. So, of course, it's not Sean Connery flying the rocket belt.
No.
It's a real device. Then they brought in, at the time, there were only two guys who could fly it. And they brought in one of the guys, Bill Suter. He flies the rocket belt off the balcony, and we see Bond with the two guys chasing him. Bond stops and puts on the helmet.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Now, really, okay, there's safety and then there's safety. Bullets will be flying at you virtually any second. And you stop and don a helmet to protect you from injury in case you might crash with your rocket.
If I was putting a rocket belt on, I would put a helmet on.
With your rocket belt. I mean, yeah, you'd want to put it on, but I mean, they're going to be killing you with bullets any second here. You know, take your chance. I would take my chances. Like, I'm getting the hell out of here. But anyway.
Well, the producers not wanting Bill Suter to just fly the thing without a helmet, but Suter insisted on wearing the helmet. Therefore, they have to show Bond wearing a helmet.
There you go.
They actually had to film the scene with Bond and the helmet later, as far as we can tell. Now, interestingly, in the UK, back in September of last year, the GNASS, Great North Air Ambulance Service, and Gravity Industries tested a jetpack for paramedics to use to reach those injured in mountainous terrain. Andy Mawson of the GNAS said that it's the biggest advantage is its speed. What might have taken a few hours could have taken minutes, a matter of life or death. Wow.
Yeah, I actually just read an article on this military website that was talking about how they're looking to use these things. They're working with a contractor to develop these things. They say it can go 200 miles an hour, but it can only go for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But you can cover 30 miles in that time. Yeah. So if you've got to bring some specialist onto a site or get somebody out, you've got a really interesting use of this thing. And when they do that, I'm going to instantly think of Thunderball, and I'm going to think about how much I want one of these toys.
Yeah, I think the Thunderball one, the real one, could only go for like 30 seconds or something.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All
right.
So now I love when Bond flies this thing, and then when he comes down, the amount of dirt that gets kicked up when he lands, the normally pristine DB-5, it's got this layer of dust on it from this landing.
Sure.
But the passenger window was open, so the interior of the car would have also been covered with dirt.
Yeah, so they get a little dust on their clothes. Big deal. I mean, he's dusty already. He's dirty. He's been in a fight. Who cares? There's another suit and wardrobe.
But as he drives away, the DB-5 looks pretty clean again.
Yeah, that's true. It just seems inconsistent.
Cleaned up a little bit. Now, did you ever wonder?
There we are with continuity and the Bond films again.
Yeah, that's not a big thing. Now, did you ever wonder why the rocket belt is sitting on the balcony just waiting for Bond to escape? Anybody out there wonder that? We did too. And here's what we think is the answer. Remember we said earlier that Bond said to his French connection, "Come on." Yes.
Well, you told us it was important to remember.
It was important, and here's why. Bond beat the widow to the chateau because he flew his rocket belt to the chateau much faster than a car. He can fly as the crow flies. And it would have been a very short distance across the property of the chateau. So, bam, he's there.
I don't think that they would have seen them in the car.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Wouldn't they have spotted it?
Maybe on the other side, of the chateau. Although
there were a lot of trees.
You would think, okay, maybe you could see it, or hear it, but they didn't. And who's waiting for Bond when he escapes with the Aston Martin? Yeah, his French contact. And there she is. So she was in on the whole rocket belt thing from the beginning. So there you have it.
Let me then say, you just said a second ago that the thing could go like for 30 seconds.
Well,
who refilled it while he was on?
In the movie, we don't know that. In the movie, we don't know that. In real life, it could go, I think, for about 30 seconds. So, in the movie, we have to have the willing suspension of disbelief, which sometimes you have to have with a Bond movie. I don't know.
That's true.
Now, Stephen J. Rubin, who's the author of the James Bond Movie Encyclopedia, and we did a podcast on him with that, and he's a contributor to our group on Facebook, he reminded us that Rose Alba portrayed Madame Bouvoir, and the Japanese actress Mitsuko played Bond's French liaison. There you go.
Yes, when Bouvoir's limousine pulled out after the funeral, the DB-5 is parked next to some other cars. But then I have to ask, What did he do with his hat and jacket that he had on the balcony during the funeral? Where did they go?
He hopped onto a jetpack. What happened to his hat?
Well, first of all, on a narrow screen version, which if you look on some of the YouTube clips of this, you can't see the DB-5 parked off on the right. You got to look at the widescreen version of this to see that. And secondly, his hat and coat, what the hell? This is easy to get rid of, especially since Bond knew that his plans were to fly the rocket belt to and from the chateau. He gave them to his French connection or threw them out. What does he care?
How did he know he'd need that? How did he know he need that? He wasn't certain that Bouvard wasn't dead until he saw Bouvard get into the limousine. I mean, remember, he was at what he thought was Bouvard's funeral. He was making sure it was. And then he sees that it's Bouvard instead of the widow getting into the limo.
Yeah.
So he had to make the decision then to go to the chateau. So how would he have been prepared for that?
Well, because he had the rocket belt in his trunk. And, no well-dressed man should be without one, he said. So
yeah.
he had it in his trunk.
Down to the car.
But the car's in front of the chateau.
Threw his hat and jacket into the car, got the rocket belt on, put the rocket belt on, flew across the chateau, and still beat the car that drove a half a mile.
This is the problem with the DB-5 being parked in front. Now,
and it's here again that I can see Q saying, "I've got this new item for you, Bond. Take this with you. You might need it." It's here again. How did Q know he's going to need something like this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, Q's good with stuff like that. He kind of knows. And Bond, being prepared, may have hidden the rocket belt in the back of the chapel, outside. Who knows? We don't know for sure. But he said, come on to the French connection, and she was part of this. So, all right. Back to his escape, they quickly throw the rocket belt into the boot of the Aston Martin.
How hot would that have been? If he had just flown a rocket from the thing, and he just lands and immediately takes the thing and throws it into the boot.
Very careful where he grabbed it, I'm sure. Very careful where he grabbed that thing.
Yeah, and then now the top of this boot looks like it has a very light layer of dirt, very evenly distributed on here. Remember I said
it kind of looks sloppy to me. I don't know.
That it had this layer. So if you look at the top of the boot, it does look like there's a light layer of dirt dispersed on it. We'll talk more about that in a second.
Yeah, there is dirt on it for sure. It's not unilaterally distributed.
Well, no, actually, when he lands, it is.
I can't see that. I didn't see that part.
Now, the top of the boot looks like it has just a very light layer of dirt. And as I said before, evenly distributed across the car, including the top of the boot.
And just as Bouvard's henchmen are about to open fire on them from the ground level as they ran after them out of the chateau, the DB-5's rear shield comes up.
And then the back of the car's dirt changes. It looks almost rusty. It's blotchy.
Yeah, it's
and
blotchy.
The dirt isn't evenly distributed at all. And it wasn't just the act of the shield coming up. Something changed between the one take and this next take.
All right. Then you see Bond. He fires out water at a tremendous velocity, enough to knock down all three guys in pursuit. Now, there's four things I want to point out about the water. As Tom asked in another podcast, where can the Aston Martin store all that water?
Yeah, I could see it shooting some water, but not that much.
And water, I mean, God, fundamentally a water hose is being fired at you. So it's pretty easy to step aside. Right? The hose is firing in one spot. Step aside, you won't get knocked over by it, or tumble and roll and avoid it. No, not these guys. They all get knocked down by the water. That's my second point. The third point is, why waste time with the water if you're Bond?
Because you can. Q gave you a cool toy. You've got to use it.
The bulletproof shield is up. Drive away. Get the hell out of there. What are you waiting for? Water. Yeah. But the last point on the water cannon shooting out of the Aston Martin, it answers our last question. This is a brilliant transition to the title sequence and a foreshadowing of what Thunderball's dominant theme is: water. It's all about water, and this scene magnificently alerts us to what we are about to see as one of the main themes in the movie. Water, water, everywhere. From swimming pools with sharks the NATO aircraft underwater, the frogmen, underwater caves, secret underwater doors on boats, and more. It all starts right here. Brilliant.
It really is.
We post a lot in Bond Facebook groups, and we posted about this episode coming up and asked for some input. So Aidan Nairn, one of the members in one of the groups, said, I love Bond's pre-title sequence, especially how smoothly it transitions into the title sequence. So he agrees with us. And they're all good, but I'd say it's between Thunderball and Goldfinger for Connery's best pre-title sequences. We love them both. They're great. He's right.
Now, the last shot is water splashing up against the camera lens as it morphs to a beautiful silhouette of a woman underwater. Bubbles rising and the Thunderball title song playing. Tom Jones belting out Thunderball to the title sequence. Love it.
Yeah.
I think it's the first time they used nudes in the pre-title sequence too.
They used less and less clothes as they moved forward. Maurice Binder did the titles for Dr. No, and there's some silhouettes of clothed dancers.
Mm-hmm.
Then Robert Brownjohn took up the title sequences for both From Russia with Love and Goldfinger. In From Russia with Love, the images are projected over scantily clad women. Goldfinger was the first title sequence to superimpose over a gold-painted model, although the model was wearing a bikini or a bra and panties or something like that.
Yeah.
So in Thunderball, Maurice Binder returned and added the nude silhouettes.
Yeah.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service brought out more silhouetted nipples, and over time the silhouettes had more light cast on them, leaving a little less to the imagination.
Yes, Binder filmed naked swimmers in black and white and then added colour by use of optics for effect.
Yeah. This was a fun discussion. It was fun decoding some of the scenes in the pre-title sequence for Thunderball. That wraps up our coverage of the pre-title sequence. Thanks for listening. This has been Dan Silvestri.
Tom Pizzato.
And Vicky Hodges.
With our quick-fire look at the pre-title sequence in Thunderball. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to our show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies, right now through your favorite podcast app. And on YouTube as well. Tell a friend about our show. Support our sponsor, SpyCoffees.com. And thanks for listening. We appreciate it.